Right now, Iran has an active, highly specific military plan to sink a $4.5 billion American target. That target is the USS Abraham Lincoln. This supercarrier is the absolute crown jewel of American naval power, and taking it off the board would be the ultimate geopolitical prize. The U.S. has spent $40 billion in this shadow war. For scale, India's entire defense budget is $75 billion. If the conflict drags on another month, the U.S. will eclipse that, spending more on skirmishes than a major power spends on its entire military. Iran knows it cannot match the Pentagon dollar for dollar. Their strategy is a calculated financial bleed, designed to exhaust American resources before delivering a fatal blow to the most expensive floating asset the U.S. owns. That fatal blow depends entirely on where the Lincoln is sailing. This map highlights the Arabian Sea and the narrow Persian Gulf choke points. Iran laid down a strict ultimatum. The second the carrier crosses that line into their firing range, Iranian forces will obliterate it. Military analysts take this threat seriously due to Iran's asymmetric swarm tactics, using fleets of fast, heavily armed attack boats to overwhelm massive vessels. What used to be a standard patrol zone for the U.S. Navy is now a tightly constrained, multi-billion-dollar trap. This aggressive posture isn't random. It's driven by a strict demand for one-to-one retaliation. The inciting incident happened when a U.S. submarine strike destroyed an Iranian warship, the Dina. Losing a naval vessel shifted Iran's rules of engagement overnight. They stopped focusing on low-level harassment and instead started actively hunting high-value American targets to settle the score. In the psychological doctrine of Iran's military leadership, sending a giant U.S. supercarrier to the bottom of the sea balances the scales for the loss of their own ship. To the Iranian regime, the USS Abraham Lincoln represents the mandatory blood price for the Dana. It is easy to look at a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier and assume it's invincible. Does Iran actually have the firepower to take it down? Well, the historical track record suggests they do. Iran has systematically targeted and destroyed an estimated $3 billion worth of U.S. aerial assets. This includes taking out highly advanced combat fighter jets that are supposed to own the skies over the Middle East. They've also focused on crippling strategic logistical operations, specifically targeting vital mid-air refueling planes. Knocking out those refueling capabilities removes the constant umbrella of air support. Without fighters loitering overhead, massive naval vessels become dangerously exposed from above. While a carrier strike group is the most heavily defended fortress at sea, Iran's success against U.S. air tech shows they have identified the gaps in that armor. With refueling compromised and air cover gone, the carrier becomes a slow-moving, multi-billion-dollar vulnerability. The fallout from a successful strike wouldn't be confined to the Middle East. It would immediately crash into the Oval Office. Losing a supercarrier means losing thousands of American sailors in a single day, along with the ultimate physical symbol of U.S. global reach. For Donald Trump, presiding over a loss of this magnitude would be a devastating political embarrassment. A disaster like this shatters the traditional military concept of a proportional response. When you lose the crown jewel of your Navy, any standard conventional retaliation suddenly looks dangerously weak to the rest of the world. Sinking the Lincoln wouldn't end the shadow war. It would back the U.S. government into a corner and force them to cross a terrifying point of no return. The loss of a carrier would push the U.S. past the limits of conventional deterrence. To prevent further strikes on the American mainland or its remaining fleet, the Pentagon would likely begin exploring the most extreme strategic contingencies. This grim escalation logic suggests that if conventional air and sea strikes fail to stop the threat, the U.S. would be forced to review its tactical nuclear playbook to restore its crumbling global authority. If the U.S. publicly shifts its military posture to include tactical nuclear strikes against Iranian bases, it would trigger immediate global panic. Right now, the USS Abraham Lincoln is actively steaming toward a known, highly publicized geographical trap. The threshold of a global, potentially nuclear conflict now rests entirely on the physical coordinates of a single ship.